In it, he urged Meghan to see him one more time before I die.
This story just flipped in a way nobody saw coming. What if everything people thought they knew was only half the truth? What if there's a quieter, more complicated version hiding underneath it all? Lately, an old claim connected to Meghan Markle has started resurfacing online, and now people are asking some serious questions. But why is this coming back now? Her estranged father, Thomas Markle, is stepping forward again after years of staying mostly silent. Now, at 80, he says he's ready to finally speak. No big production, no dramatic reveal, just his version of events. But what exactly pushed him to talk after all this time? Instead of headlines and flashing cameras, he chose a low-key interview, sitting down and sharing memories that go way back. The kind of stories the public has never really heard before. And some of them are raising eyebrows already. One claim in particular stood out. He says Meghan went through a serious medical procedure at 19. Now, to be clear, none of this has been publicly confirmed, but Thomas insists it's something he's never forgotten.
And do something and wait 30 days to get a response from Meghan and Harry. If it didn't get...
So why bring it up now after all these years? He describes being deeply involved in her early life, from school days to her first steps into acting, saying he supported her the whole way. But then he hints at something bigger, private memories he kept hidden because she once asked him to. And now people are wondering what changed and what else hasn't been said yet. Things didn't fall apart overnight. According to Thomas, it was more like a slow, quiet drift that nobody outside could really see. Calls started fading, moments got shorter, and conversations that once felt natural suddenly sounded distant. So what really caused that shift behind the scenes? He describes it like watching a bond slowly disappear. The role he once had in her life, he says, just faded out over time. And while the world was watching Meghan's rise, he stayed silent in the background. But now he's asking, was that silence hiding something bigger? For years, he kept everything to himself. But now, after all this time, he says he's ready to speak on memories he's been holding on to. Not for attention, not for headlines, but because, in his words, it's been weighing on him. But why bring it up now after so long? He keeps going back to one moment, May 2018, just days before the royal wedding that had global attention locked in.
Not to offer him a message of hope, not to pray.
Thomas says he was recovering in a hospital in Mexico when his phone rang. He claims it was Meghan. And according to him, that call didn't feel normal. It felt serious, quick, and tense. What was said in that moment? He says the conversation suddenly turned personal, focused on old records from years earlier. Thomas claims she asked him to destroy certain medical documents connected to her past. Now, to be clear, this claim hasn't been publicly confirmed, but he insists that moment stayed with him ever since. So why would something like that come up right then? He remembers her tone as careful, almost measured, like every word mattered. And one line, he says, never left him. No one ever needs to know what happened in that hospital. That sentence, according to him, replayed in his mind over and over. But what did it really mean? At first, he thought the distance between them was just pressure from the media and everything surrounding the wedding. But after that call, he felt something shift even further. Like the gap between them wasn't just growing, it was locking into place. He claims the conversation ended with a clear message. Don't contact me again. If you care about me, you won't. And after that, silence. No calls, no messages, nothing. So the question is, was that truly the end, or just the beginning of something nobody expected?
Yeah, and so, in a way, and she's completely rewritten him out of history. Now we know
the distance between them didn't just stay, it got worse. Then, out of nowhere, something unexpected showed up. Thomas says a cream-colored envelope arrived at his home, with handwriting he believed he recognized right away. Neat, careful, familiar. No return address, just a Los Angeles postmark. And that alone raised questions. Why send it like that? He remembers standing outside as light rain fell, porch light flickering, turning the envelope over in his hands. Something about it felt heavy, like whatever was inside carried more weight than he was ready for. So instead of opening it right away, he paused, took a breath, then finally unfolded it. But what was written inside? According to him, it wasn't a short note. It was 7 full handwritten pages. Clean, precise, no crossed out words, no mistakes. Every line looked intentional, almost like it had been carefully planned ahead of time.
Meghan Markle has finally reached out to her father, Thomas Markle, who is fighting for his life in a...
He says it didn't feel emotional. It felt controlled. So why did it read more like a statement than a message? What really stood out to him was how it began. No dad, no warmth, not even a greeting, just his name. Plain, direct, distant. And he says that alone felt cold. But then came the part that made him stop completely. Thomas claims the letter suggested he had spoken to the media and hadn't protected her privacy. That accusation, he says, caught him off guard, and suddenly the tone of everything shifted.
You know who doesn't have a dad? Me. And millions of others out there who would kill to have just one more Christmas with them. Just one more chance to hug them or spend time with them and put any BS misunderstandings behind us. Her dad has had 2 heart attacks and a stroke. He lives just a few hours away from her, but now he's dead to them because he didn't deal well with the paparazzi. He's ghost.
So the real question is, was this letter meant to explain things or to draw a line he couldn't cross? He kept reading, but now every line hit harder than the last. One sentence, he says, stood out immediately. She wrote that he was holding on to things that no longer belonged to him. He read it again and again, trying to understand what it really meant. But then it got clearer and way more serious. What exactly was she referring to? According to Thomas, the letter didn't stay vague for long. He recalls lines like, "You know which documents I'm referring to," and "You know what was said in those years." Then it turned direct. He claims she wrote, "I'm asking you for the last time. Destroy them, shred them, burn them if you have to." That wording, he says, didn't feel casual at all. It felt intense. So why was it so urgent?
According to Meghan, she was very close to her father when they were growing up. Her parents divorced when she was very young.
Another part stuck with him just as much. He says the letter mentioned consequences for holding on to things that no longer belong to him. Even though the tone stayed calm, he describes it as something that felt like a warning. Not loud, not aggressive, but impossible to ignore. What was behind that message? When he reached the final page, nothing softened. No warmth, no personal touch, no sign-off like love. Instead, he remembers one final line. "I am moving forward now. This is the last time I will reach out." Clean, final, and just like that, it was over. He says he sat there in silence, the rain still falling outside, the pages resting in his hands. No big reaction, just a heavy feeling that didn't go away. The kind that hits when something changes for good. But here's where it takes another turn. He didn't destroy the letter. Instead, he says he locked it away in a fireproof box. Not out of anger, but because he felt it mattered.
Thomas has gone into intensive care after being rushed to hospital for emergency.
And then he points back to something even older. A moment from the summer of 2000, when Meghan was 19. And that's where he believes the story really begins. But what happened back then that connects to all of this? This is where the story goes way further back, and the details start to feel even more serious. Thomas points to the summer of 2000, when Meghan was home from Northwestern. He says something didn't seem right. She wasn't acting like herself. There was fatigue, ongoing pain, and it didn't fade quickly. At first, it seemed like stress, but then doctors started raising bigger concerns. So what was really going on at that time? He remembers her being extremely private about it. According to him, she didn't want other family members involved and asked him to keep everything quiet. No spreading it around, no turning it into a bigger situation. And he says he respected that. But why was keeping it secret so important?
Last week, Markle, who underwent life-saving surgery for a blood clot in his leg and had a leg amputated, gave an interview to a newspaper from his hospital bed. In it, he urged Meghan to see him one more time before I die and said he would like to speak to her. Markle has never met Prince Harry or their children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet.
Thomas claims he stepped in to help however he could, even paying for a medical procedure himself. He says it was handled directly, without insurance, at a small, low-key clinic in West Hollywood, somewhere he describes as known for privacy. Everything about it, he says, felt intentionally discreet. But what exactly were they trying to keep under wraps? One detail stuck with him the most. He claims she checked in under a different name, with paperwork that didn't even show a full identity, just Patient 1472. That, he says, felt unusual enough to remember all these years later.
It's understood she deleted his phone number from her phone after her wedding to Prince Harry in 2018, when relations with him became strained, when he admitted he'd staged paparazzi photos of himself in the run-up to the wedding, and he later had to pull out of attending the wedding after a health scare.
But then something else caught him off guard. When he came back to pick her up, he says she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was another woman he didn't recognize at all, and in that moment, he couldn't help but wonder, who was she, and what role did she play in all of this? He says the woman stood out right away. Short dark hair, sunglasses indoors, the kind of detail you don't forget. At first, he thought she might work there, but something didn't feel right. Then Meghan saw him, and instead of relief, he remembers a flash of surprise, tense, caught off guard, like she didn't expect him there at that exact moment. Why that reaction? That split second stuck with him.
Not my doing. That's all her doing. And I'm going to let that be.
If she doesn't want me to see them, that's the way it's going to be. I won't.
And what happened next made it even stranger. No one spoke. No introductions, no explanations, just silence. He says they walked out of the clinic together without saying a single word about it. The whole moment, he describes, felt heavy. But why stay silent like that? Weeks later, he claims he figured out who the woman was, someone connected to Meghan's early acting circle. But he says he won't reveal her name, explaining she's still living a private life. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something about that day was being kept out of view. So what was really going on behind the scenes? Then comes another detail he says makes it even more unusual. While standing in that hallway, he remembers trying to call Samantha Markle. At some point, he believes he may have accidentally triggered his phone camera. And days later, while scrolling through photos, he noticed something he doesn't remember taking, a random image from that exact moment. But what did it actually show?
It was like, he's never called me Megan in any day that I've lived on this planet. Meg. All my friends call me Meg, and my parents call me Meg. And I was like, that's not my dad.
He says the photo was blurry, but not blurry enough to ignore. According to him, you could still make out figures: Meghan, the unknown woman beside her, and someone else further down the hallway. Even more surprising, he claims the timestamp matched that exact day at the clinic. He insists it wasn't taken on purpose, but he kept it anyway. To him, it became another piece of a moment that never fully made sense. But what does that image really prove?
Or letter of communication with my dad by my sister. So there does still seem to be some type of disagreement about whether this letter...
Before all the headlines and global attention, he says Meghan's life looked completely different. Early 2000s, building connections, stepping into the entertainment world, trying to find her path. Around that time, public records show she met producer Trevor Engelson. And according to Thomas, that relationship seemed strong for years. So what changed? He remembers Trevor being around the family often, watching movies, showing respect, even calling him sir. It stood out. Their relationship lasted years, eventually leading to marriage in 2011.
Tragic news coming in. Meghan Markle's father, Thomas Markle, is undergoing leg amputation.
From the outside, it looked solid, like he was fully part of her world. But then, unexpectedly, it ended. And not loudly, quietly, almost too quietly. Why was there no noise around such a big split? Thomas recalls a detail that stuck with him. He says Trevor once received an envelope at his apartment. Inside, both wedding rings. No note, no explanation. Just the rings. He describes it as cold, final. And then came a message, passed along through a mutual connection. Just one word: closure. Nothing else.
For over a year, the UK tabloids were trying to find my dad, offering people so much money to try to find his address. Once they did, I remember being told there was a huge headline like, "We found him," or "We've got him." You're talking about someone's father. And from that point, the tabloids, they moved into the apartment next door and across from him, descended on this small town, were just giving him gifts. The whole thing brings us to where we are today.
But what was left unsaid? He also believes Trevor may have come across something from Meghan's past. According to Thomas, it involved a medical referral letter under a different name sent to a Beverly Hills P.O. box. That detail, he says, raised even more questions. But the real mystery is, how much did Trevor actually know, and why has none of this ever been fully explained? That detail raised quiet questions at the time, but instead of making it public, Thomas says Trevor handled it privately. According to him, Trevor asked one simple thing: "Is Meg okay?" A calm question, but it carried weight. And then he added something that stuck for years: "I just want to make sure she's being honest with herself." Why would he say that? Thomas says that short moment never left his mind. And years later, when Meghan's life moved into global spotlight, the past started getting attention too.
Seriously unwell father, Thomas Markle Sr., who's 81 years of age, fighting for his life in hospital.
Media outlets began digging, looking for anyone connected to those earlier years. Trevor's name kept coming up, so why didn't he ever speak? Reporters, according to multiple accounts, tried reaching out again and again. There were even claims of interview offers, but Trevor stayed completely silent. No statements, no hints, nothing at all. From the outside, some saw that as respect, but was it something more? Thomas believes that silence may have been intentional, like certain things were meant to stay private no matter how much attention surrounded them. But then came a moment that got people talking again. At Trevor's later wedding celebration, witnesses say he became emotional during a speech, and one line stood out: "There are things I'll take to the grave, but tonight isn't about silence. It's about finally breathing again." That hit hard. But what exactly was he letting go of? To Thomas, that didn't sound random. It sounded personal, like a chapter closing that wasn't easy to live through. And just when it seems like the story couldn't get more layered, another family member starts noticing something strange. He says Samantha Markle was one of the first to sense that something wasn't adding up. There was a stretch where Meghan had very little contact with the family for weeks. At first, it seemed normal, just time apart. But Samantha wasn't convinced. So what did she notice that everyone else missed?
Father, the Duchess of Sussex, has managed to get a letter delivered to his bedside. On December 10th, a spokesperson for the...
Thomas says Samantha felt it right away. The silence wasn't normal this time. It felt off, different, enough to make her question what was really going on. So she asked him directly, was something serious happening? According to him, he kept it simple. He told her Meghan was dealing with something personal and asked her not to turn it into a bigger family issue. But that didn't settle it. If anything, it made Samantha more curious. What wasn't being said? Thomas recalls mentioning a small women's clinic on a quiet street. Later, Samantha decided to see it for herself. No drama, just a quick visit. She says the place looked low-key, almost hidden, with barely any signs outside. That alone raised questions. What kind of place stays that under the radar? Inside, she says she kept things casual, speaking briefly to the front desk. But then something caught her attention. A file sitting out in the open. According to Samantha, the label read M. Grand. And that name hit instantly. Why did it feel so familiar?
The Duchess of Sussex has no plans to see her father again and has given up hope of reconciling with Thomas Markle.
She says it reminded her of a nickname Meghan had used years earlier online, something only a few people would recognize. That's what made it stand out. But instead of confronting anyone, she walked away, quietly. No scene, no questions, just more mystery. Later, she tried calling Thomas. Once, then again, then again. Days went by before he finally responded. And when he did, she says he sounded drained. Not open, not talkative, just short. His message? She's okay. Don't bring it up. She doesn't want anyone to know. And that was it. But why shut it down like that? Samantha believes that moment changed everything in the family. Some chose to respect the silence, others couldn't ignore it. The tension didn't explode, but it never fully went away either. Then weeks later, during a family dinner, she brought it up directly to Meghan. Mentioned the clinic, the file, everything.
As the father, the man who raised her solo, when her mum ditched her during her teenage years.
And according to Samantha, the response was calm, almost too calm. No anger, no panic, just one line that stuck with her. Then you also know why I can't afford to be like everyone else. And that raises the biggest question of all. What did she really mean by that? That line didn't come off defensive, at least not according to Samantha. She says it felt calm, almost like an acknowledgement of something deeper. And even after years of public disagreements between them, she insists that memory never changed. So why does that moment still stand out so clearly? Samantha believes something serious happened during that time, and that the silence that followed wasn't random. In her view, it was deliberate. Multiple people, she says, chose to keep things quiet as the years went on. But what exactly were they protecting? The clinic mentioned in these accounts has been referred to as the LaFonte Women's Wellness Center, described as a private facility in Los Angeles. Reports over the years suggest it is known for discretion, especially among people connected to the entertainment world, a place where privacy wasn't just expected, it was the entire system. But how private was it really?
Meghan Markle has sent a written letter to her estranged dad Thomas after he had his leg amputated during life-saving surgery. But it is understood the Duchess of Sussex, who has not spoken to her father since 2018, will not fly out to visit him in hospital.
According to journalists who later looked into it, staff followed strict confidentiality rules. No names shared, no details discussed, nothing leaving those walls. For a long time, the clinic stayed completely under the radar, until curiosity started building. By around 2024, some reporters began digging deeper, trying to get answers. But visiting the location wasn't simple. They described tight security, controlled access, and limited entry, the kind of setup that keeps things locked down. And that only made people wonder even more. What was happening behind those doors that no one was supposed to see?
Letters. She was phoning hospitals, but we now know that she allegedly will not speak to.
There was no easy way in. According to reports, without an appointment, you weren't getting through the door. No exceptions. One journalist claimed that when they asked about past patient records, staff shut it down instantly. No answers, no discussion, just a warning that authorities could be contacted if the questions continued. Why such a strong reaction? Another reporter tried a different approach, posing as a potential patient through email. But the result? Silence. No reply, no confirmation, nothing at all. That only made things feel even more locked down. What were they avoiding? Then things shifted again. Around 2025, reports suggested the clinic went through what was described as a strategic restructure. Not a full shutdown, but definitely changes behind the scenes. And one detail stood out. Some sources claimed patient records were moved outside the United States, possibly to servers in Switzerland. If true, that would make access far more difficult. But why move everything so far away? Thomas says he also tried reaching out years earlier, not for attention, but to confirm his own memory. He submitted a formal request asking if any records existed. The reply, he recalls, was short and direct. "We cannot confirm nor deny the presence of this individual in our facility at any time." And that was it. No explanation. Nothing more. What does that kind of response really mean? He also claims he later spoke with someone he describes as a former nurse, Marina, who worked overnight shifts assisting patients. According to him, she later moved away from California. But what she might know is still a question waiting to be answered. He says in a private conversation, the woman he calls Marina told him she remembered Meghan at the clinic. Young, nervous, and clearly uneasy. But just as he tried to ask more, he claims her tone shifted. She went quiet, and the details stopped there. Why pull back so suddenly? According to Thomas, they spoke again in 2023. This time, he says she repeated the same memory. Meghan seemed withdrawn, something staff noticed that day. But then came another detail that stood out even more. He claims she mentioned someone came to pick Meghan up, someone who wasn't family. According to his account, that person guided her out through a side exit, keeping everything low-key and out of sight. No attention, no noise, just quiet movement. But who was that person, and why the side exit? Looking back, Thomas says too many pieces still don't fully connect. A private clinic that rarely speaks, records that may no longer be easy to access, and people who remember parts, but not the full picture. It leaves gaps that, in his view, were never clearly explained. So what's missing in between those moments? At the same time, he makes one point clear. He's not saying private medical decisions should be judged or made public. He believes those choices are personal, no question. But he feels that as Meghan's public image grew around openness, some people from her earlier life slowly disappeared from the story. Why did those connections fade away? He points to the pattern, people linked to that time who stayed silent, a former husband who never spoke despite attention, a sister who raised questions even as her claims were debated, a former staff member who remembered something but didn't go public. And then there's him, holding on to letters, memories, and moments from years ago. He says he once saw himself as one of her biggest supporters, but over time, he feels his place in that story changed. Now, he's not expecting things to be repaired. He's accepted the distance. What he wants now is simple, his side to be heard alongside everything else. So after all of this, with so many pieces, so many silences, and so many unanswered questions, what do you think really happened behind the scenes?